Welcome back, boys and girls, ladies and gentlemen. This is Real Big Ten Football Talk +1 with Chris. I am Chris. This is week 9 of the 2018 college football season. And without further ado, let us get started with this episode's matchup, shall we? That's right, it is the number 19th ranked Iowa Hawkeyes sitting at 6-1, 3-1 in the Big Ten Conference at number 18, Penn State Nittany Lions, 5-2. They are 2-2 in the Big Ten so far this year. This is a game against two teams that are kind of going in different directions, honestly. Iowa is on the rise. They had a very impressive win last week against Maryland, 23-0. Penn State is kind of on the downtick, so to speak. They have struggled as of late, barely beating a substandard Indiana team last weekend in Bloomington, 38-20 or 33-28, I believe the score was. These two teams don't play each other horribly often. In fact, this is the first time they played each other while ranked for the first time since 2010. They've only played each other since 1930 was the first game. Now, compared to the rest of the games I've done on this channel so far, that's not a whole lot of time. Now it is still 88 years off and on. That was still still 12 years prior to the Pearl Harbor bombing, but it's still, they do still play each other, just not horribly often. In fact, I think they've both been in separate divisions since the Big Ten expanded to allow for Nebraska to come in 2012, I believe it was. So they haven't played each other horribly often, but this is a good matchup between two ranked opponents, and this is, honestly, the highest profile matchup in the Big Ten this week. And it is an exciting one. Looking at the schedules, Iowa hasn't had a bad schedule. I know I downplayed their schedule a few weeks, or last week really, when they played Maryland. But honestly, thinking back on it now, really they had 3 games that were not great to bad. The Wisconsin loss was bad. In Iowa City, lost 28-17 to a Wisconsin team that got blown out then against Michigan a couple of weeks ago. Not a good loss, and Iowa didn't look good in that loss. To a Wisconsin team that really, as it turned out, is okay but not great. The Northern Illinois win was pretty good to start out the year, but Northern Illinois is not as good as they have been in recent years. At Iowa State in Ames, that same Iowa State team took out Oklahoma State and West Virginia in back-to-back weeks recently. So that was a very good win, I think, for Iowa. Granted, I know they're 3-3, but they are on the uptick and they're tough teams. That was a good win for Iowa. Then what they do to follow it up with, they did beat Northern Iowa 38-14, but UNI isn't a great team this year, and they're an FCS opponent on top of it. I believe they're 4-3. That's a mediocre FCS team that he allowed 14 points to at home. That doesn't look great to me if I'm an Iowa fan. Yeah, he scored 38 points, that's great, but it wasn't against a great opponent. And you basically put up a goose egg against Wisconsin the next week. Maybe you're looking past UNI to Wisconsin. Doesn't matter. You still got beat badly to an opponent that you really could have beaten. But then, for the last 3 weeks, you've done pretty well. At Minnesota, winning 48-31. A decent Minnesota team in Minneapolis is impressive. At Indiana, blew them out 42-16. And then this past week, shut out a resurgent Maryland Terrapins team that has struggled offensively this year, but still, anytime you can force a conference opponent to 0 points, you're doing something right. And it impressed me a lot. Penn State, honestly, your best win that I've got so far for you is against App State in the first game of the year. That App State team is ranked 25th this week, just to let you know. and they've only lost one game, and that was the one loss they've had in overtime. So a good win for Penn State. And they followed it up with a very impressive win at Pitt the next week, and that is a rivalry game, so it's always good when you can demolish a rival like Penn State did in that game against Pitt, 51-6. And then Kent State the next week, I don't know why I said loss, I'm sorry, they won that game 63-10, an impressive victory, even though it was a substandard opponent, still impressive to throw up 63 points against anybody. Give up 10 points, but it was probably garbage points in the first place. Very good, impressive win. But then the next week, they were in Champaign, beat them 63-24 again, put up 63 points, but you gave up 24 points to a team that isn't great on offense. Offense. And then the next week, well, the next two games, really, you struggled. Badly struggled. The Ohio State game, you should have won. But you got unlucky. Ohio State capitalized on the miscues, and you lost 27-26. Michigan State, another one. Another game you could have won, but lost 21-17. Two back-to-back games you lost in Happy Valley. Not to use puns here, but Happy Valley is not so happy at this point. Then last week, you struggled against the unranked Indiana team, barely winning 33-28. I saw parts of that game. Indiana looked quite dominant against a Penn State team that, quite frankly, should have blown them out. Penn State, I worry about you. Iowa, you've done well the last few weeks. The last five matchups with these two teams, Penn State has done pretty well. In fact, winning four out of the last five. But the last time these two teams played each other while ranked was in 2010, and Iowa did win that affair 24-3. A lot's changed since 2010 for both of these teams. In 2010, Penn State had Matt McGloin throwing for him. Iowa had Ricky Stanzi. Iowa hasn't had a decent quarterback since then, honestly, until now. Nate Stanley's looking pretty good. Penn State, Trace McSorley has taken a downtick. But in his defense, last year, he had a Heisman contender in Saquon Barkley running for him, so it took some strain off of him, and defenses were more focused on the run, so he could sit back there and throw more easily than he has this year. Still has a good running game, Penn State, but their passing game is on the downtick. Iowa's marquee win, again, like I said, last week against Maryland was a very dominant performance. In fact, Maryland only had 7 first downs, 4 of 10 on third down for 40%, 68 rushing yards, 47 passing yards, 6 of 16 Iowa forced Maryland passing. No touchdowns and 1 pick thrown, 115 yards of offense. That's how you throw up a goose egg in the scoring column. 6 penalties for 46 yards, turned the ball over twice, and only had the ball for 19 minutes and 5 seconds. That means Maryland's defense was on the field for 40 minutes and 55 seconds. Honestly, it's impressive to only give up 23. Could have given up a lot more. For Iowa, 22 first downs, 50% third down efficiency, 224 yards on the ground. Now, accuracy speaking on in the air, you're only 11 of 24 for 86 yards. Horrible, but if you're running the ball for 224 yards and you're only holding the team you're playing against 115 total offensive yards, doesn't really matter if you only have 86 passing yards through the air. You still play dominant. 310 total yards for Iowa, 0 penalties. That's playing almost perfect. Did turn the ball over once, which isn't great, but when you have the ball for 40 minutes and 55 seconds, you can afford to turn the ball over once. Considering how fresh your defense was for most of the game, they could easily go out and force Maryland to 3 and out, force the punt, and get the ball right back to the offense anyway. Dominant win for Iowa against a conference opponent, and not a bad one in Maryland. Penn State, like I said, we'll look at the App State win as a marquee win for them. That's really the best win they've had. Actual win. First downs, pretty even. Third down efficiency, Penn State has a slight advantage, 40% versus 37.5% for App State. Both teams look pretty solid, consistently wise, balanced wise. App State did have a little bit low of a running performance, 159 yards. Penn State, a little bit low on passing, 229 yards, but accurate, both quarterbacks, 20 of 35 for Penn State, 26 of 39 for App State. Penn State did have the cleaner game at 1 passing touchdown, 0 picks versus App State's 2 passing touchdowns to 1 pick. Both teams got over 400 yards of total offense, not bad. Why App State lost and why Penn State won, in my opinion, App State had 10 penalties for 105 yards. You can't win many games when you commit 10 penalties, especially against a stronger opponent. Penn State played a cleaner game. They played less penalties, 0 turnovers. That's why Penn State won with 2 penalties for 10 yards, 0 turnovers, and converted on third down. Enough said, it was a good victory for Penn State. Rushing statistics. Iowa, not actually pretty horrible running the ball this year on offense. Averaging 165.4 yards per game. That's 75th nationally. But on the flip side, running defense, Iowa has given up almost nothing on the ground. 79.6 yards they've allowed so far this year. That's second nationally. Penn State runs the ball pretty well at 240.7 yards per game. That's 13th nationally. But they've given up far too many yards on the ground. That at 165.1 yards per game on average. That's 74th nationally running defense. And we'll look at Penn State's defensive woes in a little bit, but they are not great. Iowa, solid on defense against the run. Where Iowa excels is more or less in the passing game. Completion percentage, not bad at 60.6% per game. That's 63rd nationally. 231.9 yards per game. That's 68th. But where Iowa excels is that they don't allow Nate Stanley to get knocked on his rear end very often. Only allowing 6 sacks this year. That's it. 6 sacks. I have 7 games played. That's less than a sack per game. That's very impressive. That's 10th nationally. Passing yards allowed, Iowa, again, does very well. Only allowing on average 178.6 yards per game. That's 18th nationally. Penn State, they struggle with accuracy. 55.2%. That's horrible. It's 101st nationally. Passing per game, Penn State again doesn't do great, but it's not horrible at 239.9 yards per game. That's 58th nationally. But they do allow Tracy McSorley to get hit more often than not at 13 sacks allowed. That is 50th nationally. As we'll look later, Iowa does do very well themselves at rushing the quarterback. So that can spell trouble for Penn State. Passing yards allowed, 226.9 yards per game for Iowa. That is 68th nationally. Again, doesn't bode well for Penn State. Offensive efficiency. Both teams are pretty efficient for the most part, but Iowa does hold on to the ball for quite a bit longer than Penn State at 33 minutes per game versus 28. Average starting field position, pretty even. Iowa starts out on average on their own 37. Penn State basically on their own 35. Either way, that's excellent average starting field position for both teams. Third down efficiency. Iowa is an excellent 49.1%. That's 11th nationally. 10 turnovers lost. Not great, not horrible. Red zone touchdown percentage. Iowa is a bit low at 65.9%. Red zone scoring percentage. Again, a little bit low at 87.5%. Got to take more advantage of those opportunities inside the 20. But that is 38th nationally in red zone offense. Average penalties committed per game, not horrible for either team. 5.86 for Iowa, 5.57 penalties committed per game on average for Penn State. Iowa, 52.71 average penalty yards given up per game, not great. a little bit of a caution, but not horrible, and Penn State at 51 yards. Penn State, they struggle badly on third down. Horrible third down efficiency at 36.8%. If you're under 40 and you expect to win many games, you better raise that percentage. It's 92nd nationally. Turnovers lost, not bad, at 9. Red zone touchdown percentage. This is where Penn State excels, inside the 20. They do score touchdowns 81.8% of the time. But with your offense so far, you have to get to the 20. Red zone scoring percentage, 97%. That's 8th nationally. That is quite impressive for Penn State. But again, with your offensive woes you've had the last couple of weeks, you have to get to the opponent's 20 to be able to excel in what you're good at, which is scoring inside the red zone. You have to get there. Overall defensive splits, not bad for Penn State, but excellent for Iowa. 13 turnovers gained, 9 interceptions, 22 sacks. That's 13th nationally. Total defense, 258.1 yards. This is a stout, bludgeoning, rip your heart out defense. That's 3rd nationally in yards given up. Net punting, both teams pretty even. 39.13 yards per punt on average for Iowa. That's 44th nationally in net punts. Turnover margin, both teams pretty good. Iowa +3, it's 37th. Penn State +2, that's 43rd. But where Penn State struggles, total defense. They are allowing 392 yards of total defense. Penn State has not faced many offensive juggernauts to have to given up that many yards of total defense. That is 71st nationally. Penn State does do well with sacks, though. They have gotten 25 sacks this year. That's more than 3 per game. That is 3rd nationally. Neat little tidbits about the game. Teams did play each other for the first time in 1930. I mentioned that earlier. Iowa did win that game 19-0. Penn State narrowly edges Iowa in this series at 15-12-0. Like I said, they don't play each other very often. In 88 years, they played each other 27 times. Not very often. I apologize. I meant to take off that 3rd tidbit, so we'll have to ignore it. This is the first time these two teams have played each other as ranked opponents since 2010. Iowa did win that matchup 24-3. Now, what does each team need to do to win this game? For Iowa, they will win if they play clean and smart. Iowa, you are going into a hostile environment. You don't want to beat yourself and allow Penn State to take advantage of those miscues, i.e. turnovers or penalties. You have to convert on 3rd downs as you've done most of the year, and you have to use the clock to your advantage. You convert on 3rd downs, you extend drives, you keep your offense on the field, and you keep Penn State's defense on the field. It's a win-win for your team, Iowa. Penn State does struggle with time of possession. You have to use that and gas their defense, while keeping your defense fresh through long, sustained drives. That demoralizes, that crushes the spirit of a defense if your offense can consistently convert on 3rd downs. You have to score touchdowns inside the 20, Iowa. Touchdowns. You can't settle for field goals all the time. You have to score 6 points in that red zone. Take that loud fan base out of it. You can't give that Penn State defense confidence, and you have to play a well-rounded game. Don't just pass. Make them respect your run game as well, Iowa. Or lack thereof, like you've had most of the year. You need to develop one in this game to give yourself a chance to make yourselves more balanced. For Penn State, you win the game if you start out aggressive. You are at home. Use that to your advantage and capture and maintain that momentum through the game. Penn State, you are also more battle-tested. You also have to use that experience of being hardened and being battle-tested and playing the tougher schedule than Iowa has played. Albeit you've lost those 2 matchups against ranked opponents, but you have still played more ranked opponents than Iowa. You have to use that to your advantage with the experience. You have to hit Nate Stanley early and often, force Iowa into becoming a run-first offense where they have struggled. You're going up against an excellent rushing defense. You have to rely on the pass while still using draw plays to extend drives on 3rd and short. That means you have to protect Trace McSorley. You're going up against a good pass rush. For Trace McSorley, you're going to have to roll out and make throws on the run. You got to be creative on offense to catch that Iowa defense napping. You have to get off the field on 3rd down on defense. And on the flip side, on offense, you have to convert 3rd downs. Get yourselves into 3rd and shorts more often. You have not done well at converting on 3rd downs this year. You have to do a good job against this Iowa team or you're going to lose. And you're going against a team that does very well on 3rd down on the flip side. You have to force Iowa into 3rd and longs. Make them punt the football. Cannot afford to give up sustained long Iowa drives and expect to win this kind of a game. Who to pick? Again, this is a tough game to pick. Mainly because they don't play each other very often, so I don't have a whole lot of data to go off of as far as how they've done against each other historically. Not that that matters as much, but it is a nice little tool to use. But they don't know each other real well. So who to pick? This game is going to rely on who can control the line of scrimmage, who can control the time of possession, and what defense shows up. But I do believe Iowa is on the uptick. Penn State is on the downslope. Penn State has lost both games to ranked opponents. You can feel the momentum leaving that team, and you can feel the momentum coming into Iowa. Iowa's a tough, strong team. Both teams are well coached, but I do believe Iowa will take advantage of Trace McSorley's miscues. Penn State won't be able to move the ball against this Iowa defense. It'll force Penn State into being a pass-heavy team where they have struggled, and they will struggle in this game. Trace McSorley will get hit early and often, and Iowa will convert 3rd downs and will have long, sustained drives. That's why Iowa will win a tough, hard-nosed, very excellent game at 24-17. Now, if you like this video, please like, subscribe, or share. It does help my channel, and I do appreciate the views. Thank you in advance. And if you didn't like the video, please hit that thumbs down button and let me know why you didn't like it so I can improve your viewing experience. Again, thank you for watching, and until next time, everybody.